the pins basically. Then I have a alligator clip set up to just a random loose wire with an alligator clip on it that I had in my toolbox. Clamped it to one side. You should find a side that has the 5 voltage, but like I said, to get that data you need to get online and look for it. Alright, today I got another car. This is a 2000 and I don't be never getting these years right. 2011 Chevy Malibu. I remember I looked at the certification label. That's on the door jamb on the driver, right? Driver door jamb, right? Look outside the car, open the door, see tire placard and that little label right there. Let you know some good information about your car. Along with these other labels that they put here, emissions control labels, everything. So this one we got I'm gonna be doing a transmission on this one. I'm gonna do like, I can't like really get into the details of it. It's just these transmission parts and just whatever. Sometimes it's just worth just putting another transmission in it because getting these parts can just add up more than the cost of like getting a used transmission that's pretty good with the warranty, and it's just easier that way. Another issue is that she said that she didn't have no AC and that the temperature gauge inside of the car did not work, meaning it was stuck flat at where code read, where the marking C is, right? Or the letter C. So I scanned the computer and I saw that there was a P0128 and the engine temp below regulating whatever. The code for the thermostat. Usually it could be a code for the thermostat, and that code, that's what I know from when I started out as a scrappy, being a mechanic or whatever, a young scrap. I saw that code. The code was infamous in a lot of cars, and usually came down to the thermostat, and it can be easily diagnosed, more so always in winter condition, basically when the temperatures are low. Easy to identify what could be the cause of that based on conditions. But in this case, what I do know is that the engine, and it's pretty warm outside, we in spring now, so we're in May at that, but I do know that the engine seems to be not at operating temperature. And I did like a little quick check, live data or whatever, but the purpose of this video is I'm gonna go, because I don't do diagnostics with y'all on this channel, but I'm gonna introduce that along with a whole lot of other different things or whatever, but this is one of the things I'm gonna show you. So first thing we're gonna do, make sure if you guys wanna take some notes, because this is good for you to like learn. That way, because they don't teach you this in school. They don't teach you this in school. You don't pay me jack shit, but you pay the US government a lot of money to get an education, right? And you still not even like, your skill level not even up to par to fix a car correctly, right? On your own, like how I can do, right? All of that takes special learning that you need to focus into yourself. You need to, something you need to harness on your own. Learn, everybody tailor yourself to be a man. You need to man yourself in this situation and learn. So please take notes. So that way when you get a job like this, you can do basic diagnostics. Basic diagnostics. I still can't even say the word, and I'm trying to be serious with y'all. Basic diagnostics in a matter of minutes. And this is just something basic like this can turn to something more on a higher level, towards you can take on different circuits within the complex circuits at that, or different type of sensors that are potentiometers, or you got variable resistors and stuff like that. So we'll get into that, and it's nothing to talk about. Let's go. All right, first things first, you should always educate yourself on using code readers. You use one of these, or you use one of these as well too, but the difference between the two is this has like bi-directional controls, and I can see way more data than this thing can do. This thing is just a code reader. It just tells me, hey, my monitor is ready. It let me know what's green, what's red, or whatever. And it also just gives me the code. It does nothing else. But this, I can get freeze frame with this. Freeze frame, like, no problem. We'll show you the difference between the two, but we'll worry about, if you want me to, under request, if you want to learn how to use a code reader properly, you can always ask me. But for now, we're working on a bi-directional tool. which I was given this to review. Some representatives or whatever hit me up from launch and asked me if or I believe it's the company or whatever, as they say, whatever. Asked me if I can review, they give me this in exchange for like a review, and that I did, and I believe the video did okay. Probably still trying to gain, because this was kind of like fairly unrecognizable for like a lot of people. Did not know that maybe that this did exist or it didn't exist. But for the cost, that I believe you can get one of these for like a little bit over $400, but if you can get like a coupon code, you can save. I don't know, they do have coupon codes or whatever, but I don't know if they still doing promotions on it or if they raised the price. But it was one of those deals that it was priced low, that they probably gonna, I expected for them to raise the price, because this is, and then the updates on it is pretty cool, because we in 2024 and I still got, when I already tell me I got an update so far, I just updated it and I didn't have to like pay for anything. So this is definitely one of the things that you should get, and it's pretty competitive versus like a snap-on scan tool, whatever it is model that they use nowadays. So I'm gonna place this down here and we're gonna break down. I took a couple notes so that way you can understand this, that way you learn. So this is could be like a classroom setting, but I'm gonna teach you what they don't teach you properly in school, so that way you can understand it. So let's break the code down, and I took notes so that way I'm not rambling on about rambling on. I'm staying on topic. I could give you this off head, but it's just, I'm not gonna be like very scripted like some of these people out here when they do videos and they gotta check in and out of scenes or whatever and give you the facts after they read it or whatever. I read it to you from my notes out of my damn brain or whatever. My thoughts, I wrote it down, I recite it to you. So P0128. So always know the definition of the code. You need to know the code number. You need to, the sequence is not important. Just remember the damn code, just like how you remember how to tie your shoes. Remember, and I'm gonna be very harsh on you, very harsh when I break this lesson down. We're gonna break it down fast, because I do not want to be more than 20 minutes or 15 minutes doing this crap. So I ain't mean to say, for me, it's just a quick rundown for you. Shut the hell up, learn. So, learn the definition. The definition is engine coolant temp. You say temperature or temp. Engine coolant temperature or temp below regulating temperature. So, if it says it's below, usually you use your common sense in the definition. If it says 128, then it also says coolant temp below regulating temperature. The temperature is not where it's supposed to be at. Basically, that's all you need to know. Write what the hell I just said. Don't worry about what, and even though you're going to study, it says coolant temp below the full definition, but my definition of P0128, the engine is not where it needs to be temperature wise. It's below specs. Just note that. You should know these basic concepts or basic terms or basic computer strategics or programming that the computer does. When you first start your car, you ever notice why the idle so damn high? Crank the engine up, then the idle would, then it get quiet. Sorry, that's the best way I could do it sound wise. It probably sound like a retard, but that's the best way. Shut the hell up, it's my goddamn channel. Put this down for a second. But you notice how that noise, the engine sounds high, but when the engine warms up, the needle goes down, 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 and then so does the tone of the, like the sound of the engine, right? That's because the computer is in a program setting, or a set setting basically, where it has set parameters to follow when a car is first started. Usually the car spits out more fuel, basically. It's trying to get the car to warm up quick. We're trying to get you an operating temperature so that way we can get some real settings, so that way we can control the emissions on this car basically. So one of the things that's going to be up is the idle, but the coolant, everything usually, mostly in this case, if you study how circuits work, some cars based off of coolant temp sensors that reports back to the computer itself, but you got other cars like this that based off the engine temp sensor, I can't even say, the engine temp sensor, and also the IAT, the intake air temperature as well. It uses the two, makes up calculations that you ain't gonna never know. Only thing you need to worry about is voltage and resistance. Mostly, you're not a circuit tech. It's no need to be breaking it down. We just minor in electrical and fixing cars. That's just it. So another thing you also need to know is, write this down. These type of circuits are not based off of high voltage circuits. Anything that's coming directly out of the battery that's fed on like 12 circuits. Your window switches, basically, for an example, are ran on 12 volts. They wouldn't operate right on 5 volts. They wouldn't operate right on 2 volts. So usually circuits for a computer can have 12, that's possible. But circuits like this, especially a 2-wire circuits, that's just got for signal performance, or let's just say signal circuit itself. And then the other circuit is just a feedback. It's just like a reference, basically. Or, I'm sorry, the reference is a voltage sent, which let's just say the computer outputs 5 volts, sends it to the sensor. And then in return, the sensor, based off of resistance, because this is a pressure sensor that's based on whatever pressure it has, the resistance and like voltage basically changes based off the, we can break down what type of, you need to learn what type of coolant temp sensor it is basically. I believe it's a negative coefficient type sensor, meaning it starts off high, meaning the computer sends 5 volts, and then when the voltage comes down, I don't know, around 2 volts, or you may see obviously the engine is at a certain temperature, could be higher if it's down like around 2 volts or something like that. I don't know, I don't remember exactly how that works. I'm not saying I don't know, I need to look at live data to better determine this for you basically. So what I'm saying is the computer basically sends 5 volts as a reference. We need to see what you can report back to me. So the signal circuit is what brings information back, is the input. It brings back information back to the ECM, engine control module, the engine ECM, basically how you want to call it, ECU, whatever, PCM. All three of them the same thing basically. So if the computer sees 5 volts for a certain amount of seconds while the engine is either, if it's in closed loop or closed loop, that's one of the monitors that's just going to run for it to check. So it may throw a check engine light for it. May not do it on the first time, but if we see it more, let's just say for 6 seconds for an example. If it sees high, we're in a closed, let's just say we're in a closed loop or whatever closed loop. If it expects data at a certain amount of time frame, and I don't know, I just threw 5 or 6 seconds out there just to throw it out there, I don't know. You got to read this information and learn how the circuit works so you can better determine, like how it makes you better at diagnosing it. So what I'm saying is, so basically the computer sends 5 volts, right? And if it's stuck where it's at, right, we see that it's a problem because it's the computer is counting. Everything is math and timing basically. It's counting how many times we're not seeing any adjustments basically. So let's say you start the car up again. This time it sees the same thing and it does the same type of counting again, right? So bam, we're gonna throw the check engine light on. So this is how the check engine light comes on basically. So let's check live data. We check it together and I'll tell you what to look for, this type of code. And you should have already taken some notes, basic notes, like what I told you about the reference circuit, which is the output, right? And the input coming in is the signal performance, right? You should know the difference between the two basically. And what I'm going to do is also, for this type of circuit, another way you can fastly diagnose this, if you jump the circuit itself. So if you know that one side of the connector sends 5 volts, right? You should see only 5 volts sitting at a connector, right? It's a 2-wire. You shouldn't have to pull up a wiring diagram to get off technical on this type of circuit, because this is basic. It might sound hard, but for me it's basic. So you see 5 volts, right? A full 5 volts you see, right? You shouldn't see 12. If you see 12, it's a problem. If you see less than 5 while it's disconnected, that's the problem too as well. That means that something is hacked into the circuit, or something is shorted out in the circuit, or something from the computer that's going through the circuit is causing this unspecified voltage, or voltage that's just not supposed to be where it's at basically. So now the fastest way you could, well, what I'm going to do is quickly, while I pull up the data in the scan tool, and since this 5 volts will be sitting there as I expected, I'm just going to jump it, which means because it's disconnected, I should have access to the pins. So I'm going to take a back probe and a wire or whatever, take the 5 volts, loop it to the next one, basically. Create a loop, basically, a path, basically. I'm finishing a broken circuit because the circuit is open because I disconnected it, right? So take one pen, loop it over to another, right? It should send a 5 volts back, but if the coolant temperature is already hot, that means the resistance should be less, or the resistance should be, I don't know, more or whatever. The negative coefficient temp sensors would be like confused. I'll just say it starts at the resistance. Believe the resistance builds up in the inside because it lets a 4 or 5 through, but when it starts getting hot, obviously if the voltages go down, the resistance is increasing the inside, I believe, or something like that. I could be wrong. You can correct me. Don't worry about any of my information being incorrect because I'm the one who know how to diagnose this shit anyway. You don't know what you're doing. I do this for a living, so don't worry about if I make an error. I get my damn job done. So what I'm saying is, once I jump that circuit, once I see that, if it goes straight to hot, I don't know if that's like 1 volt reading or 2 volt, I don't know. If it goes straight to hot, then I know that we don't have a problem with the circuit itself because I can loop it back and my needle should be working once I looped it in the car, right? Cool. So if I can read a temperature reading that's higher than what it's stuck at on a scan tool, then I'm just gonna rule it out. We got a problem with the coolant temp sensor. Now, your way you can test the coolant temp sensor. If you want to test the coolant temp sensor, it's easy. You don't test for voltage. You just test for, you ohm it, right? And you need to look up the specifications because specifications matter. Basically, you don't just base off something off of common knowledge. You need to read everything you get yourself involved to. So let's break it down. All right, so I'm gonna play a little bit of music at this scene because my neighbor playing music and I don't want YouTube to get on my nerves about copyright. So let's get this engine started. And let's plug this up. You notice how the coolant fans just kicked on automatically? So stuff like that you need to pay attention for. So this one does like an auto detect, which I don't like because it's annoying. I hate every time when I plug it up. I believe that's a setting you can take it off. Every time you plug it up, it doesn't go to that feature or whatever. The auto scan is cool sometimes, but it's just annoying. So we're gonna load it up. All right, cool. Everything you should do automatically, unless you got a car from like 2000 or something like that, or a 99, and you can't get an auto on it. So we at where we at, VIN number match up, all that. You can do a health report to see what all comes up, but at this point, I'm just worried about the code that's in the engine control module, just the code that's just the global code, the regular code. I don't care about what's not prominent or what had already passed. I'm worried about what's failed, basically. You get what I'm saying? So let's read some codes. Display. We have a transmission code. Obviously, I'm doing transmission work on this, so we're not going to worry about that. We have a P0128, which I told you to read the definition. Let's go back to if you want to look at like freeze frame data, additional information, freeze frame, and you can worry about the freeze frame from this data itself. I don't care about that one right there. Let's go to here. And if we got a problem with the engine temp sensor, basic stuff you could care about, like what temperature it was, at least the engine, or at least it could have been outside. So at 84 degrees, it's been hot lately around here. 84 degrees is kind of hot for me at least, but it's been warm like that around here lately. Barometric pressure, you should already know, it should be at 14.7, but you already know this type of data is read not in detail, so it's just going to display me at whatever it rounds up to, which is 15, which is close enough. Where we at? Engine load, it was only 25%, which means it was light throttle. Engine time, run time, you should pay, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place with this. Engine run time, you should pay attention to the engine run time. The engine was running for 6 minutes after it had it like up to a point where it detected everything. Engine idle speed, we had about 1,359, which means the engine speed was a little bit, maybe they was at cruising speeds, and that could have been, I don't know if they was cruising speeds. I need to check Maybe they show me what gear we in. I don't know. Honestly, I don't care either, but we got 1 out of 3 pages, which I don't know why it's not gonna let me see the other one. I honestly don't care. The only thing I'm worrying about on this screen realistically is the engine coolant temp sensor. So it says we at 131 degrees, but I need to also see if we in closed loop, because let's go back to regular data. Bam, data, engine coolant temp sensor. Let me see if I can find something in here. Loop status to let me know where I'm at. And also, I need engine coolant. And I'll pull it up together. Let's see where we're at. So we're in a closed loop status right now, but we're stuck at 100 and before. I don't know what happened. The coolant fans are running, so the engine is, and it's not really hot outside today, so the engine is not itself is not going to allow it to get hot because the coolant fans is cooling it down or over cooling it down. But the coolant temperature is at 114 degrees, and I ain't gonna lie, I had this car running for like 30 minutes and it maintained around here between 114 to like 120, but it kept fluctuating, all because the coolant fans are on trying to like bring it down. So this is not sufficient, because I believe that at some point in the data, time-wise, it's not supposed to see this at 114 degrees for a certain amount of time. So that's why the computer will throw a code, because it sees this problem. This engine is taking too long to warm up. This really has how it sees it basically. So let me just show you the gauge inside of the car, so that way we can just confirm, so that yourself you can just see. In the car. And I brought down the ISO, so it's not as like high, but we can see the needle is basically flat just like this. But usually these temp readings in these cars, I never really had like a Malibu that went like halfway. Usually it'd be at that notch just above, just below that half, and it doesn't, it's just the way it reads it, and it's how they output it. I don't know why they do it that way, but some cars that'll stay in the middle and it's totally like normal, but this type of car doesn't ride the middle, it's just a notch below the middle. So the gauge is flat, but I also said I had this car running for a long time. You need to be able to locate in all data, or whatever it is you use in Metro, Pro Demand, Identifix, I don't care what you're using, but you need to be able to, Haynes manual, I don't even like those no more, but we do everything online now. You should be able to access the coolant temp sensor, which usually is located in the back of the, sorry I meant to cut you up or just stutter stuff like that. It's because when I went to try to remove the connector from off of the coolant temp sensor, it started spinning completely. Like the base of it is just no longer connected, and like as in the integrity of it is what I'm trying to describe. It's just spinning around, so that's kind of weird. So just let me know that the sensor took a crap, but that's just good. So what I was trying to say is you need to be able to locate your parts. If you don't know where something is, why are you trying to diagnose something? So that's why you always prepare yourself and do your homework before you go into a job. To get access to information like this, usually you got to pay to play. You have to pay to play. There's no way you can think that you're just going to get free information on jobs like this, especially when it comes from a lucrative business. Everything costs money to know something. You got to pay money to fix it. You got to pay money for parts. You got to pay money for information. Yeah, you can think you can get information off of people from off of the forums. Yeah, but at a certain degree. Now, they don't even know what they're doing. They're not even like mechanics like that. So everybody usually just fix their car based on common problems, but sometimes common problems, they're not common problems. So what I'm going to do is separate this connector, in which I did. It does feel right after I separated. I'm hoping that it didn't take off the rest of the sensor on the inside. So let me see if I can. It came off cool. So we have a 2-wire circuit, and I want to go back to this coolant temp sensor. I want to see if I can. Yeah, the baseboard itself for the coolant temp sensor, where you put your wrench on or your socket, that is tight. But the connector for it, or like the head for it of the sensor itself, that one is loose. And I need to get down here and retrieve my light. I paid too much money for this snap-on light trio set that I got, I've paid a hell of a lot of damn. I won't put no money, no damn clothes and nothing like that, but I'll put some damn money and some damn tools. Ain't that some shit, right? So we got the connector right here, and I try to zoom in so that way you guys can see it. So we have 2 pins on here. Let me zoom in. A few things you're gonna need, or at least I need to get myself going. I usually don't do diagnostic jobs without my power probe, and I did say this is not a complex type job to be like diagnosing. It can be if you replace the sensor and the connector and you still having issues with the circuit itself, then sometimes it can be an issue coming from the computer itself. That's a controlled circuit from the computer, not controlled as it functions in the way of movement or doing other stuff. All it does is report, but the computer sends data there and expects for it back. So it's a form of communication basically. And let's get me plugged up. Usually powered on, should have 12 volts, 12.5. We are sufficient. And I like this display because I like the display. I like to see my voltage. You can use the back in the day ones, and it does not necessarily get. I had like the red basic one, which they still sell, but I don't like that one. It's just not my style anymore. So what I'm going to do is loop the circuit over. I have a back probe kit that I got from Macco. Woo! Salud! Dang! Perdóname. Pero estaba diciendo de que compré este aquí hace mucho tiempo ahora. Pero este aquí is para checar like the voltage of the circuit, just to make sure it's like sufficient. Or it's usually when you're trying to hack into a circuit, you're trying to get, imagine a doctor trying to like take your pulse basically, and he got the sharp, or he needs your blood pressure, or he needs to test your blood, or whatever it is the doctor need to do, he need to poke you up. Or diabetics, when they got to poke their skin up to take just to test data. That's the same thing we got to do when we dealing with circuits. So I'm gonna find some good probes, some good pins, back probes, stick them in there. And you could do it from the back side or the front side. These pins are already not like the best anyway, but don't stick them in there so deep. It looked like this connector was like replaced at like 1 point, I believe. So I don't know nothing of this. Maybe before I was her mechanic, but I've been like her mechanic for like a super long time. So unless she went somewhere that I have no idea of, I don't know. So gonna turn the ignition on because we need voltage, right? Get the ignition on. And I need scan tool data as well. So let's get the air off, turn the headlights off. I'm not finna drain battery. Come on. Come on. Okay, not my friend. Alright, not working. Doesn't matter. So let's go back, yes, let's read engine data. Let's go back to okay. And we are at negative 40 degrees, which is showing at the end of the day. Alright, I had did a little fiddling around or whatever, but I just wanted to jump the circuit just to make sure we didn't have like an issue with the circuit itself. So if you can see real good, and I'll zoom in right there. So basically what I did is, you saw me apply 2 back probes to both of the pins basically. Then I have a alligator clip set up to just a random loose wire with an alligator clip on it that I had in my toolbox. Clamped it to one side. You should find a side that has the 5 voltage, but like I said, to get that data you need to get online and look for it. Then I can just, let me just put this plastic part down more so it's not touching, and put it inside of the back probe itself because you can fit the wire inside of it. And then look on your scan tool data and you'll see that the temperature goes up to 302 degrees as at least what the computer sees itself. This is gonna be the best way I can show you because I need somebody to hold the damn camera and do all this extra. I ain't got time for it. Look at the damn graph itself so you can see at the bottom on this axis is the x-axis. We got time-wise, right? And then on the y-axis, I guess it's supposed to read out in It doesn't tell me what it read on the y-axis. I could be wrong itself, but I believe this could be based on the type of voltage or whatever it is. It doesn't give me like there's no legend for it to let me know exactly what it is, but obviously that's another form of measurement. Don't worry about that. We're worrying about these square wave patterns or whatever. So right now we're flat, right? We're flat, right? So I'm going to jump the circuit, right? Jump it right over. Bam. Applied it in the inside. What do we see happen now? So just pay attention to the graph. Time-wise, it's a little slow. I'm not sure if I could adjust it so you can see it a lot quicker. Maybe if I zoom in. But I'm not finna get into all of that. So we see where we at, right? So now, I'm going to remove it. We should create that box pattern. Bam. So what does that tell me basically? I'm going to apply it again because I like the way the shapes look. I think it's pretty decent. So basically what this tells me is we don't have a problem with the circuit itself. We could just overall have a problem with the sensor. Before the camera got messed up, I don't know what happened, so I guess I'll explain myself all over again best as possible. So if the camera caught what I said, I took a coolant temp sensor off of a 5.3 engine I got sitting off of here, and it connects into it as is. It fits no problem, but I wouldn't use this sensor to operate this car because the parameters could probably be reading different a little bit. I'm not sure. Either way, there should be a type of coolant temp sensor that runs off of similar specifications basically. So basically I got it plugged in, and I'm going to check the coolant temperature inside the car. I'm going to turn on my GoPro right now. Alright, so the GoPro sees the coolant temp sensor now, pretty good lighting and everything. So what I'm going to do is be careful doing this, and I want you lighting that up on fire, and I don't want you to be having like fumes everywhere all up in the engine bay or whatever. You get it caught on fire. So for you, please just use a heat gun basically, or a blow dryer or a heat gun basically. For me, I'm using a lighter because I'm going to heat up this base. And remember I told you that this type of temp sensor only works off of basically like how it's variable. It's not a variable like resistor, but it's one of those type of resistors that the type of sensor that the resistance changes, and you'll see a difference in the temp needle basically. So I need to see a change in resistance. So I'm going to create a hot block effect basically, meaning I'm going to act like I plugged it in the block and it's hot. So I'm just going to heat up the head for maybe 30 seconds. And that way the inside of the car, at least the coolant temp reading or the temperature gauge inside of the car, should be already going up already right now. See how the engine timing is starting to change? Because it's probably seeing that, hey, this engine probably hot as hell. So I feel it kind of shaking a little bit. So let's go inside the car and check. You can see that the needle is going up actively, obviously, because I apply heat. But you can now see that the needle is working its way back down, probably because there is no more heat applied to it basically. So basically what I had done is I saw this is how I would have diagnosed it. I think I went a little bit too in depth for it and took my time for you guys. For me, usually I could do a job like this really fast and diagnose it, but for you I had to break it down in steps, so that's why this video is timed the way it's timed or whatever. So let's proceed to something else. If you don't have a coolant temp sensor to swap out and heat up and test, another way you could have did it, which is the way I was trying to tell you with the scan tool, just jump it over and make sure you see the data change and allow data. But in this case, because the engine light was on, the scan tool displayed the actual, but you would have had needed to reset the light itself, so that way the instrument cluster can see the data too as well. So you got to clear the light first right before you jump the circuit, and then when you jump the circuit, you'll see the needle going up basically or whatever. It's basically what it should just be doing. Or you could just take the sensor just like how I did, just plug it in and heat it up. But like I said, both methods work. But regarding when I had initially plugged in the coolant temp sensor, and I heated it up. I didn't get no changes in the scan tool. I did, but I didn't get no changes in the instrument cluster. Why? Because the engine light was on. I had to clear the code itself for it to see. So you got two options: with the sensor or jump it over, and you'll be able to see it that way. So I knocked out I guess like 2 birds with 1 stone. We had she complained about the temperature gauge wasn't working, and another complaint was that the AC wasn't like sufficient and it stopped working sometimes. So when we got an issue like this, especially with a coolant temp sensor, that will affect the way the coolant fans operate. It will affect the AC performance overall, and it won't perform as good because the engine needs to be where it needs. Another thing, if the computer readings are just off, we got shorts in the circuit, you can play with the ignition timing. When I say the ignition timing for the engine itself, see how when I heated up the engine, or at least the temperature, the engine started to like shake a little bit. That's because the engine was trying to adjust, like advance the time or retard it or adjust it, whatever it is it does. The engine, like if the computer sees that the engine is like overheating, that will affect the timing of the engine itself, period. So just knows that this little sensor does enough, cause a lot, enough for you to think that it could be like other issues. Really just something comes down to something simple. Other things that it could be, like I said, you could have an issue with wiring, but I think I already verified that. You could have an issue, I had an incident where like a engine computer, everything was replaced, like wiring and fuses or relay or whatever, fuse box I mean. Still had an issue with the coolant temp sensor not working in the car, I forget, so we ended up putting a new computer in it, and then it just solved it. So sometimes at minimum, when you're seeing voltage you're not supposed to be seeing, or resistance or whatever it is, when you're going down through your diagnosis, basically, because you can replace the engine computer. Sometimes they happen, but this was the basic diagnostic. So I'm pretty much done. I believe I gotta run back to AutoZone because I'm still working on this 2008 Chevy Tahoe, which put brakes and rotors on there. I don't know if I already explained it in the video in the beginning, but I probably explained it again. But I put brakes in it. Came to me leaking brakes from the right front. Piston broke apart basically. He didn't get his brakes done in soon enough time, and the piston came out of the board basically, leaked everywhere, came out in pieces when I took it out. So I replaced the front passenger rotors, replaced the caliper to the side for the passenger side, replaced the brake hose and everything, and we still got plenty of air in the system. It will not go away, man. I'm tired of buying like brake fluid at this point. So all I know, air keeps spitting out the front calipers, and I tried locking down. One of the methods I like doing process of elimination is locking down with some needle nose vice clamps. Every brake hose from wheel to wheel, each wheel I mean, lock it down and then apply the brakes. The brakes are like rock hard. Then you know your master cylinder is like, it has pressure enough for you to have firm pressure in the brake pedal, right? But if while it's clamped, if it goes straight to the floor, we know the brake master cylinder itself not holding pressure at all. So you know brake master cylinders are designed by default to give you at least some type of a little bit of brakes to some degree, whether if it's for the rear or front brakes or whatever, where it goes to. You'll have a tad bit of brakes, but you won't have strong brakes. Such as safety wise, that's just how it's like set up as some type of like redundancy or whatever. So I recommended him to get a brake master cylinder. We're gonna replace it because I've been through this issue before. I'm gonna bench bleed it a couple times, put it in, do a gravity bead, and do a vacuum bleed if needed. But either way, I should be able to get it this time because I'm tired of bleeding and I ain't got no other damn leaks. It's annoying. He came in here, he rode the car in here with the brake fluid, like with nothing in the reservoir. It was like bone dry, like sucking in air if you wanted to go like apply the brakes. It was annoying. So that's my problem. So never let your brake master cylinder run dry and then you try to drive it around too and keep getting air in it. You mess some cells up inside of the master cylinder. So I'm Leekautorepair. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and we're gonna keep these videos pumping. We're gonna keep it coming. I'm not playing. And we're gonna talk about, well, I gotta be planning a trip soon, but I need to get going with that because I wanted to get some content. Said I want to do like a little mini doc on it, like a documentary. We just gotta put that together. I gotta get my notes together. They say if you don't plan, you plan to fail, right? So that way I'm planning on a whole lot of things to do because we chasing this bag. We ain't stopping until we get it. So let's go.